Thank you, everyone, for continuing to join us. It's a very deep subject. It's a subtle thing, and the Shiv Shakti is something I think is really very interesting. For example, if I look at it through my eyes, in India, there are two different kinds of deities, and the Shiv Shaktis really correspond to the BKs of the confluence age. And when we look at Saraswati and Jagat Amba and Durga, Kali, all of these are different facets of Mama. And Mama was, in a sense, you could say the epitome of Brahma Kumari as a Shakti. And she left the body in, I suppose, 1964, 65. And she was quite young. She was around 45 years old. And so she had been doing this practice 1937 to 1964, 65. So within that 30-year period, she had reached that level. And her practice was really very internal and incognito. And she would have a lot of deep discussions with Brahma Baba. One thing is her role as taking care of the BKs who were, in many ways, there were many who were very young children who then grew up to become the dadis. For example, Dadi Prakashmani, I believe when she came in, she was around 11, 12 years old. And I know Dadi Janki used to speak about that she came in at the age of 21. She was already married, and then Baba had asked her to look after what was called baby bhavan. So she was looking after the very young children, but she also became the nurse in the Yagya. So everybody had a role that they would play, which was basically very basic, very simple. But then their spiritual practice was really substantial. And this is why they developed into what I call the super yogis. They really focused a lot, but I think that, none of this was talked about. We do have Mama's Murlis, but I don't think that what we get in terms of Murlis, whether Baba's Murlis or Mama's Murlis, which was spoken to the gathering in general. So there are deep, deep points which are hidden in the Murlis. And I think that all of that information is there, it's available, but we need to extract it. And Baba had said that the way you extract it is by churning. And this analogy of churning milk to make a separation of buttermilk and butter, and then cooking the butter and extracting even more water so that you get the ghee. And this ghee is the real essential knowledge. And then there's another thing which is said about Saraswati, which is also the memorial of Mama, the swan. And the swan is said to be able to differentiate between pearls and stones, and also to be able to separate milk and water. So in the Murlis, you have everything. And what I have sometimes called the packaging is the context. So the context of the Murlis is the form of Hindu bhakti, which was familiar to the people who Baba was speaking to. So they are fairly simple devotees. What does a Shiv Shakti have to do is really work to extract the spiritual essence, and then you don't really need the context anymore because you already know that. And for people who are Western BKs, our context is different. So for many of us, definitely for myself, I decided that if I want to really understand this, if I want to really practice this, I really need to know the context. And so I did study these things, and I did question intensively those sisters that I was living with. And they were really very knowledgeable about Hindu bhakti. Some of them were Lokik Brahmins, and so they grew up really having a lot of exposure to that. And then I also studied many of the scriptures that are referred to, the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Gita, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Manusmriti, the Shiv Puran, and the other Purans, because these are referred to from time to time in the Murlis. And because it's not my background as I was growing up, I felt that if I know all these things, then I know what he's referring to, what he's talking about. And then you see, I also have a fairly good knowledge of the other religions, and especially the Judeo-Christian culture that I grew up in, because I think what we need to do is understand that spiritual knowledge that's given to us by Baba is so subtle, then it has to be looked at in a context. And what we know from the knowledge of the ladder and the tree is that all the religions which emerged, they emerged in India in the context of Hinduism. And so this process of the development of religions and the different civilizations that emerged from what Baba calls the Copper Age and then the Iron Age, the roots of that are all the ancient religious, spiritual myths and legends and everything of India. And if you look at European culture, there is a pre-Christian culture followed by Christian culture. And if you look at India, you have the pre-Vedic India followed by Vedic India. And what people mostly know in India is Vedic India, and what they mostly know in European-based countries is they know the Judeo-Christian world, and then in the Arabic world you have Islam, and then there's also Buddhism, which also emerged in India. And during the development of Vedic India, Buddhism was really fell into very sharp decline, and it developed more in China and other what we had called Far Eastern countries, and so Japan and China and Sri Lanka and many places where it could develop. So we are studying this knowledge at the end of this huge development of world religions. And the analogy that Baba gives is that this is a tree, and this is not just a tree of religions. This is called the religio-political tree of humanity, so that it's civilizations, one civilization after another, they rise, they persist for a while, they fade, and then another one rises. And he's talking to us in the context of one cycle ending, one tree ending, and a new one coming, which means that, there is this reference in the Gita that I come at the time when there is the extreme of irreligion and unrighteousness. So everything is tamopradhan, including the religions, the civilizations, everything is falling apart. Now people are very aware about climate change, and because of the wars, there's a huge refugee population that is bigger than after the Second World War, which was very considerable. And so society is very, very unstable, and many of the religions, they are corrupted by all sorts of things, and people who are, under the influence of all the vices. And Baba says, you're all body conscious, you're all affected by vices, you don't have any much understanding about subtle spiritual matters. And I'm coming here at the end of the cycle to bring you back to your original condition. And I like this expression, the original condition, because it's not as if we have to turn ourselves into something that we're not, but we have to simply return back to what we were when he first made us into what we were. And that was the previous confluence age. So this is something that repeats every time. And here we are in this process of creation. And what we need is the power of God in us. And how we get that is by yoga. So he gives us a few mantras, and the most famous one is, of course, Om Shanti. And so the first step of our practice is focus your attention on yourself as a soul, and know that your original condition as a soul is still. So in Hindi, Shanti means to be still, to be at peace, and to be silent. So that was before we came onto the earth, we were like that. We came onto the earth pure, still and silent. And so he tells us now what you must practice is to be quiet and be still and be internalized, because we need to withdraw from our sense organs. And withdrawing from our sense organs means that we differentiate between all the things that we see and hear and smell and feel and touch, all these things, and taste and everything, so that we can understand that everything that we experience is occurring in our minds. All experiences occur in our minds. And why he wants us to understand this is that we can experience our contact with God when we are separate, when we are detached from our sense organs. So this is the first level of spiritual practice. And then the second step or level is that we have to be very concentrated. Another word for meditation is concentration. And so we cannot make contact with Shiv Baba unless we're really internalized and concentrated. So we have to practice that. And how do you get the best kind of concentration is by rotation. So I don't know, many of you may have done some construction at some point, and you know that if you want to make a hole in the wall, you use a drill, and a drill will take will rotate a drill bit very fast, and will make a nice hole in the wall. And he tells us you must rotate the cycle of self-realization, and then you'll be able to be concentrated. There are a number of things that happen when you rotate the cycle of self-knowledge. So he gives us these titles, Swadarshan Chakradhari. So the people of the Golden Age, these deities of the Golden Age, they do not have these, what Baba calls ornaments, or sometimes he calls them weapons. And if you can be really concentrated on your soul, that means you're turning the energy of your mind on itself, which means the energy of your mind is not getting dissipated in the material world, because you're in contact with the material world through your sense organs. And when you withdraw from your sense organs, then you can be in contact with your own soul. And what Baba has said is your soul contains all your role, your part in drama. And he says that those who are Shiv Shaktis, those who are BKs who take 84 births, they take 84 births, but some take 80, 82, 81, maybe less, some maybe come in the Silver Age. It's all very number wise, but consider yourself to be an 84 birth soul, and then focus on yourself. And what you have is the pre-recorded part of 84 births. And this is something that cannot be destroyed, and it repeats every cycle. So what does that mean in practical terms? It means that if you want to answer Dadi's question, who am I? Who am I is a soul with 84 births. That means you're not a male or a female. That means you're not a foreigner or a Bharatbasi. That means you're not of any particular religion or culture or race. And so the essential key of the practice of Raj Yoga is to understand yourself as being completely other than what it looks like when you look at yourself in the mirror and you see your physical body and all the things that go with that. Now, this is not easy. And Baba says this is easy Raj Yoga. And so many people say, why do you call this easy Raj Yoga? So in the early days when we were thinking about all these things, technology was not as developed as it is now. But nowadays, we have many dictionaries in the internet, many different dictionaries, very high quality dictionaries. And so nowadays, BKs are discovering these, and that includes me. So what you can do is you can look at these words that Baba uses, including the word sahaj. And sahaj is the word that's always translated as easy. And if you look in some of these dictionaries, you'll find that these words, some of these words can be interpreted in really many ways. Some of them 50, 60, 70, 80 different possible alternative translations. So I look at these and see that gives us a better understanding of the depth and breadth of these words. And the word sahaj also has one meaning that I find quite helpful, and that is you can use the word sahaj to mean in the context of people. So when he talks about the difference between hatha yoga of the sannyasis and sahaj raj yoga of the BKs, you can look at it in this way and see that when he says hatha yoga, he doesn't mean you're doing asanas or pranayam, but he means the whole practice of a sannyasi who will leave the world of the household and go into the jungle, and they will engage in a number of different types of hatha yoga practices. But the main thing is that they also use this expression karma sannyas. And the way they interpret the word karma sannyas is that they believe in their interpretation of the word karma, that karma refers to all the things that you do in the household, including reproduction, creating children, making money, and all those things. And it is in the process of these kinds of karmas that you incur sin. So they thought that if you leave the world and leave your family and don't do any of these karmas, then you'll become pure. So that is the interpretation of karma according to the Shankaracharyas and what you get in Vedic Indian philosophy. But then Baba says in the Murli, as you've often heard, that karma is any kind of action. And even if you're breathing, that's still karma. If you're drinking a glass of water, that's still karma. So actually, the only way that you can be completely without karma is when you're in the soul world. And of course, the sannyasis' aim of their practice is to return to nirvana and stay there. But then Baba says, well, you can't do that because you've got a part in drama, so sooner or later you have to come down. So even if you stay a very long time in the soul world, you can't have permanent moksha. So moksha means permanent liberation. So this is the aim of the hatha yogis. And then the sahaj raj yogis has something different. So he says, you must live in the household and work and do everything, but you must do pure karma. And you're doing this in the context of all sorts of karmic accounts, because when you take birth to people with whom you have a karmic account. And so you have to settle your karmic accounts. And now he says, this is the end of the cycle. This is the confluence age where you can do two things. One is you settle your karmic accounts that you accumulated from Copper Age and Iron Age, which is quite a lot. And the other is you can engage in karma with God. So the purpose of the Yagya is to engage in karma with God. Now, how do you engage in karma with God? That's not so easy because he's incorporeal. And we do karma through our body in the material world. So how do you have karma with God? So he says, he talks about punya karma. And punya karma is generally translated as charitable acts. And if you look up the word punya, definitely it means charitable acts, but it also includes other acts that would not generally be thought of as charitable in the way that we use the word charitable in English language. It's actually much broader than that. So, for example, there are occasions where Baba says that punya karma is to be in remembrance of Baba. And then he talks about the remembrance of Baba and how that plays out in practical terms in karma. And so Yagya is a very, very ancient ritual and concept. And when Baba's talking to us about these things, he's talking about pre-Vedic ideas. And when the Shankaracharyas came along, they did a lot of work to actually change many of the scriptures, and they reinterpreted the concepts, and then these reinterpretations became known, and what they changed it from got lost and forgotten. And I think one of the very interesting things about what Baba tells us in the Murli is he makes us aware of what there was before Vedic India, and Yagya comes from before that. So as you know from what I mentioned in the notes, he sometimes in the Murli, he says, this is the Rajaswaha Avinashi Ashwamedh Rudra Gita Gyan Yagya. And it comes in slightly different formats and different Murlis, but basically that's what it is. So he's specifying that Rudra, which is Shiva, sets up a yagya. And the result of that yagya is the setup of a new civilization and the finishing off of old civilization. And it's not like the continuity of civilizations that we have in historical record from the Roman Empire to the Christian empires, the Islamic empires. All of these are the historical, but what Baba is doing is he's destroying the whole civilization of the Iron Age from the point of view of he's saying that all of the ideas that are there based on materialism are incorrect, and that when you have a civilization based on incorrect concepts, the civilization will fall apart, and this is the time when it falls apart. And so it's necessary for him to give the correct gyan, the correct knowledge, and that is called the knowledge of the Gita. And so it's the Gita Gyan Yagya, the sacrificial fire of the knowledge of the Gita. So we have to sacrifice everything that has to do with materialism, which is everything that you can perceive through your sense organs. And then he says, do pure karma in the material world, in the context of your karmic accounts, in the context of Vedic India, in the context of all the many different religions which are derived from the ancient India. And so how do you do that? So he says, okay, if you focus on yourself as a soul and you concentrate on me, you will have difficulty, because it's very, very difficult to hold your mind steady, because the nature of the soul in the human body is to be in movement. So the best way to be in movement and still at the same time is high-speed rotation of the mind. And that is what is meant by Swadarsan Chakra. So all this knowledge that he gives us in the Murli, every day he tells us the whole knowledge in slightly different angles with different attention on different points and so on. But if you look at any one Murli, you will find that everything is there. And if you read the Murli many times over in a very concentrated way so that you retain all the information without forgetting any of it, that requires an incredible degree of concentration. And by practicing to study the Murlis and churn the Murlis, churning means rotating the knowledge and reading them over and over again and going into the depth of them, you will be able to acquire this kind of concentration because you're going around and around and around, and it's getting more and more concentrated, more and more high speed, and you're developing a muscle in your intellect which enables you to be strong enough to be focused on Baba. And when the karmic accounts pull your attention, which they do a lot, we're always getting distracted and we get caught up in something whereby we're not able to remember Baba anymore and the yoga is broken. So that's because you're too weak for it to not break. And so we have to practice quite strongly, quite deeply, quite intensively in lots of different ways to be detached from the body, to be rotating the knowledge, and to be really strongly connected with Baba so that you pull the energy of Baba into yourself. And this is what purifies the soul. And this is why he says that if you want to finish your karmic accounts, then you have three possible ways to do it. One is called through yoga, and then people really don't understand how you can finish your karmic accounts by yoga. But this description that I'm just giving you is what I think is meant by that. And you have to, your contact with Baba has to be stronger than the pull of your karmic account. Now, for example, you may be finishing your karmic accounts through illness. This is one of the ways, that is pain. And when you are in very, very severe pain, which happens to quite a lot of people, there's a lot of illnesses out there, and it's very difficult to be so detached from your body and so connected with Baba that you don't feel the pain anymore. But it is possible. And how it's possible is if you have practiced a great deal to be connected with Baba and you learn how to detach from your body so that you know that the pain is there, but it's not overwhelming your mind, and your mind is able to stay with Baba, and you're able to get through the pain, which tends to intensify beyond all levels of tolerance, and then it gets to a peak. And if you can still hold yourself together at that peak, then it will dissipate. And that is a moment in which your karma that was being settled by pain gets actually settled by yoga. There's a very high level of Raj Yoga, and I saw Daddy Janki doing this, I saw Daddy Prakash Mani doing this, definitely Mama had to do this. She had cancer, which is very painful in the days when treatments for cancer were not much available. So the levels of pain that they had to deal with very, very high, and they did do yoga at that level. So another thing that pulls your attention away from Baba is when you have a lot of like obsession about something. And one of the obsessions some people have is they find fault with this and that in the Yagya. Why is this like this? Why is that like that? And so in the Murli today, Baba talked about the comets who have lots of questions. The Puch is Puchna, the question. So if you are a person who is obsessive about criticism and finding fault, and this is wrong and that is wrong and the other is wrong and this person did this and that person did that, then you're not going to be able to stay with Baba when those things get triggered by things that you observe through your sense organs. And so one very, very important practice is to use the knowledge of the drama, which is a really important key. Now, the knowledge of the drama says whatever is going on, etc., it's all an identical repetition. Everybody has to play their fixed part in drama. And why do we get caught up in these things is because of our loyalty to conventional morality. And conventional morality says this is right and this is wrong, and if it's good, then it has to be like this, and it can't be like that, and all of that is conventional morality. And everyone who grew up in conventional morality, religious or not religious, is liable to get caught up in that, and that will stop you from being a Shiv Shakti. So this is actually a pretty important area because, you know, for handling physical pain, we have all sorts of medicines. So we don't generally have to deal with that so much. But I think a lot of times in the Western world, the difficulties tend to be more mental and obsessional. And so we have to deal with that. And the knowledge of the drama is a very, very good instrument for dealing with that. Sometimes Baba had said that the drama is yantra. So a yantra means an instrument. And many people, they think, okay, you learn the knowledge of the drama as a fact, but you don't really learn about the drama as an instrument. So I think one of the things we need to do if we want to really develop ourselves as Shiv Shaktis is to learn how to work the instrument of the Swadarshan chakra, the drama, the knowledge of spinning the cycle. So on one level, you spin everything to have concentration and be concentrated on Baba. And on another level, if you look at the 4 ornaments of Vishnu, what do they tell us? Because the Swadarshan chakra is one of the instruments or ornaments of Vishnu. And Baba says, although they are given to Vishnu, Vishnu belongs to the golden age, and in the golden age you don't have these ornaments. You get them in the confluence age, but he says, I can't put these 4 ornaments of Vishnu's on the BKs because they can't hold them properly. They don't know how to use them. And so we really need to learn what is the meaning of holding these ornaments and using these ornaments. So the thing about spinning the cycle is that you, when you spin all the various different things that are there, and you spin it really fast, it just becomes all one thing. It becomes just white, and white means pure. And pure means you don't have to think about it. If you don't spin the cycle and you see all the things, you get confused by it, irritated by it, obsessed by it, etc., etc. And then, as long as you're busy doing that, you're not taking any power from Baba, And on top of that, because you're using what Baba calls Pardarshan chakra, that means you are spinning the cycle of other people. And so through your eyes and ears, you see different people doing different things which you don't agree with, or you don't understand, or you question. And then you're doing Pardarshan chakra instead of Swadarshan chakra. So Swadarshan chakra, Pardarshan chakra will actually drain away your energy. So one of the problems of BKs is that, you know, you sit down for Amrit Vela, for traffic control, for evening meditation, you listen to the Murli, you may give classes to people, teach the 7-day course, all of these things you may do, but then in between, you do Pardarshan chakra, and then all whatever you accumulated in your remembrance of Baba disappears, and you go back to being just an ordinary human. And then you get the feeling that you're not progressing. And this is why I think that it'd be very helpful for us to try to apply the Gyan in such a way that we can actually accumulate and hold on to the accumulation of the Shakti that we get from Shiv Baba. And Shakti is not just only the knowledge that he gives us, I mean, the power that he gives us, but it's also the knowledge, because knowledge is power. And if we're not using the knowledge in an optimal way, and we're not using it to hold on to our spiritual power, but we're letting it all waste in Pardarshan chakra, then it becomes very difficult Raj Yoga, and we don't feel that we're progressing. We don't we kind of lose consciousness of what this is all about. So really knowing that is very important. And the other ornaments of Vishnu, the conch, the mace, and the the lotus flower, these are addendums to the Swadarshan chakra, because we have to live a lotus life, which means we have to be detached and do karma, which is according to Baba's Shrimat. And then we have to think, you know, what should I be doing? How should I be doing it? So on a physical level, we have all the various disciplines of, you know, vegetarian and celibate, and, you know, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, all of that stuff. And so we do all that. And yet, in terms of the conch shell is talking about our words. And so he says sometimes your words must be based in knowledge. And that doesn't mean repeating the Murli all day long. That's very crude form of that kind of shrimat. But we need to say words that are meaningful, relevant, that correspond to who we are. And I remember, just to give you a little idea of something that I think might be quite helpful. I was in Om Shanti Bhavan, and Dadi Manohar came up to me, and she said, I would like you to conduct meditation from 6 to 6:30. And I didn't want to do that because at that time, 6 o'clock in the morning, myself and a few other sisters generally would go and visit Didi Manmohini. And so we wanted to visit her. And as you know, Om Shanti Bhavan was like brand new at that time. And Didi Manmohini left the body July of the year of Om Shanti Bhavan. So it was really very new, and all the interaction of BKs and Om Shanti Bhavan was getting figured out. But she asked me to do that, and I didn't want to say no, because you're not supposed to say no. And she's a Dadi. And so then I said, how am I going to deal with this? So I said to her, well, Dadi, I really would be very honored and very happy to do this. But you see, myself and the other sisters, we go and we visit Didi Manmohini, and we just have this little meeting with her before we come to the Murli. And if I do the meditation, then I won't be able to meet Didi, and that's really important. And then Dadi Manohar started laughing, and she said, oh, you put this in such a nice way. That's really good. I like your way of explaining what you want to do. And it's so nice that obviously I'm going to let you not conduct the meditation, and you carry on and you see Didi Manmohini in the morning. So I'm telling you this because some people, they feel that if a senior Raj Yogi is telling them that they must do something, it's an order that they have no choice about. And actually it's not. Another occasion where this came up is where Dadi Janki was talking to some people, and someone said to Dadi, well, if you tell us to do something, we have no choice, and we have to do it whether we like it or not. And Dadi said, no, it's not like that. That's not what is meant by Shrimat. I'm just giving you suggestions. So don't take them as orders. These are recommendations. These are suggestions. And there are some things that are definitely mandatory. You must follow celibacy. You must be vegetarian. All of these things, they're really very important. But the other things like do this, don't do that, go here, don't go there, all these are suggestions. And they are recommendations or even signals, and that if you catch it, they will be giving you things which are really much to your advantage. But there are times when maybe they're suggesting so many things that if you do all of them, it's way too much, and you have to say, okay, I will take this suggestion and I'll do this, but I won't do the others because I can't do all of it. So this is the one that I choose to do. So, sometimes people take these things as orders that cannot be discussed or countermanded or anything like that. And then they get themselves into trouble by taking it in that way. So I think it's very important for us to understand that we are autonomous, that we are free to respond, that if something is said to us that is like too extreme, that it's appropriate and suitable to stand up for yourself. If someone becomes body conscious around you and gets angry or forceful or something like that, it's absolutely proper for you to stand up for yourself and take care of yourself around that, because we're all humans, and we cannot get into a relationship with each other that someone might want to call abusive or threatening or forceful or anything like that, because after all, as I mentioned yesterday, we are brothers and sisters, and we give love and regard to each other, and we have a right to receive love and regard from our brothers and sisters, whether they are seniors or juniors or whatever. So this part sometimes gets out of order, and then you put yourself in a position where you can be exploited or abused or something like this. But if you don't use your power to stand up for yourself and negotiate the things that need to be done and what you will do and what you won't do, then you haven't understood Gyan. And I had another experience of this actually, which was quite interesting, because I was among many who would just say yes to everything, because of course you have to say Haji to everything. And then I wrote a letter to Daddy. I said, look, Daddy, this is me. This is what I will do. This is what I won't do. Take it or leave it. And she said, great, I'll take that. You do what you will do and don't do what you won't do. And that's just fine. That's a proper negotiation. And sometimes people forget that you need to know that this is what you have to do, and you have to look after yourself behind these things. So these are quite important. And I'm saying all this because, our relationship with the Yagya is our relationship with each other. And the BKs are many, many, many in number. And we all interpret Gyan, and we interpret the Yagya, and we have been told about Gyan and about the Yagya in a variety of different ways from a variety of different people. And so sometimes we maybe not quite understand where somebody else's freedom starts and my freedom finishes, or where my freedom is and somebody else's stops. There are boundaries, and we call that maryadas. So maryadas really means boundaries, and we need to set boundaries and make it clear, this is who I am, this is what I will do, this is what I won't do, and not get into this business of feeling guilty if you do something that somebody doesn't like, because then it's not a healthy relationship. And so in order for us to really become Shiv Shaktis, I think we need to know these things properly. When Dadi Janki was asked about what is really silence, she used to say fairly frequently that silence doesn't mean that you don't talk or that you try to make your mind completely empty. That corresponds to what the sannyasis do in their practices. But what Dadi Janki said is, when you really spin the cycle and you really hold all the knowledge in the palm of your hand, and you have the whole thing, then you can be still, because there's nothing more to say. Everything is clear in your mind, and so you can be still. And you can understand it in that way. But unless you have the knowledge, unless you really process the knowledge, you will not be able to arrive at this silence that God talks about. What Mama used to say is that live every day as if it is your last, which is quite a well-known saying. And if you do that, then you're going to make the best use of your time and your energy. So live every day as if it is your last is a very good policy. Most of us, we have all the books with all the Abhyat Murlis, and they're all available. They're also all available online. And, if you really study the Murli of the day as it comes, you're able to do a sustained study, an everyday study. And then every so often you might have some extra time, and then you might go into your book of Murlis and open it up somewhere. And sometimes you just get exactly the right thing that you need. And if you want to start saying this Murli is better than that Murli, it may or may not be relevant. So I don't really look at the Murlis in terms of this is my favorite year of Murlis, because they all have something very important. And some of them look more sophisticated than others, so maybe you might go for those. But even the ones that seem very more simple, they contain these gems. And this is why going over the Murlis again and again is valuable, because you extract the gems that are hidden beneath the surface. And this is so much work that I think if you take every Murli that comes every day and really give it your attention and time, you're doing something that's doable. Otherwise, it's very easy to start trying to do something that's too much, too big, and then you can't keep it up. But the way that Baba has given it to us is sustainable. And so I'd like to do it like that. Well, you know, to me, I see four things which I think are really important that I call Shrimat. And he says, be soul conscious. That is Shrimat. Consider yourself to be a soul. And the second one is remember Baba. Make effort to be soul conscious and be in contact with Baba and be in contact with everything that Baba says. You know, remembering Baba means you're under his influence, you're under the omens of Jupiter, you follow what he says, remember Baba. Then he says, spin the cycle. I think that's really important. Spin the cycle and become Swadarshana Chakradhari. I spoke earlier about that. And then the other one is be pure. And so we have to be pure on so many levels. Our intention, our motivation is very important. We are lotus flowers who are sticking up above the dirty water, and the world around us is dirty, and there's lots of impurity and all of that. But we need to be detached and untouched by that. And so if you, what I do, you take these four, and if you are doing these four, then I think, you know, a lot of things will fall into place. And you are taking responsibility for living your life as a Raj Yogi, as a Brahmin, as best as you can. And I think that that's optimum, that's reasonable, that's, you do the best that you can, and you can keep going, you see, because this track of Raj Yoga, it's called the Pilgrimage of Remembrance. So we're remembering Baba, we're traveling to Baba, we're traveling to the soul world, we're traveling through the Iron Age, we're in the Confluence Age, we're going back to our origins, and we're doing as much as we can of pure karma and service so that we're creating fortune. And then we get ready for the next cycle of the next 84 births. And that's what's going on here. You have your inner life, and then you have your outer life. And the outer life of a BK, you may be living in the center, you may be living next to the center, you may be living far away from the center. There's a lot of different ways that you could be. But your inner life, whether you're in the center or not in the center or whatever, is really to do with Gyan and yoga. And some BKs are in the context of their families, so they have to deal with living with people who are not Raj Yogis, and they still have to be Raj Yogis. Or they may be living in families where everyone is a Raj Yogi. There's people like that. But for Western people, generally speaking, you may have maybe one or two other people in your family who are Raj Yogis, and then the others are not. So you have to deal with that. In the Western world, a lot of the centers are non-residential. So you go to the center for doing some service, you go for class, you go for meditation, you go to attend programs, and then you go home again. So your outer life, your interaction with the your world and the center, you have to have a balance, which I mentioned in the notes, that in the confluence age you have your paralokik, which is your remembrance of Shiv Baba. You have your alokik, which is your interaction with the Brahmin community and the different service activities and so on, and the teachings. And then you have your lokik, so you have to deal with that. But your inner life is your spiritual journey in many ways. And you see, the Yagya as an organization is a big machine, which it's an international force, and it has, it's an organization that is got status in the United Nations. The government of India has a very strong relationship with the Brahma Kumaris. If you go to any part of the world, the BKs usually have contact with the Indian embassy. We are traveling until COVID. We were going backwards and forwards to India, to Madhuban. So it's a very, very strong relationship on a physical level. And I think that since Dadi Janki and Dadi Gulzar and Ishu Dadi left the physical form, and COVID came along, and we haven't been able to go to Madhuban, and then Zoom came along. So there are a lot of changes happening, and we're adjusting to all those changes, but we're in the middle of them. And so I think that the circumstances that we're in now are assumed to be temporary, but we don't know exactly how temporary they are. And there's so many changes have happened which are not temporary, and that when we come out of the different degrees of COVID lockdown, we have to deal with. People's work situation has changed drastically for many people. The circumstances of different countries has changed. The availability of, commodities is less than it was. Things are getting very expensive. It's getting difficult, and some people think they're going to go back to normal soon, and some people think that they're not going to go back to normal, but we have to deal with a very different sort of normal, which we're not really quite sure what it is. So there's this uncertainty. People can't really predict. There's a lot of impact of climate change that's intensifying. And so it's quite difficult for a lot of people. And it's hard to really say what it has become because it's in process. So we don't know. And therefore, we have to very much rely on our practice, our yoga, our study, supporting each other. I think this gathering is also a kind of support of each other, which is nice. Something that we're seeing a lot is this sense of BKs as a community, or a community of Raj Yogis or BKs. I mean, you're both. And the relationship with the organization may or may not be the same as it always ever was, but there's so much change going on that it is destabilizing for quite a few people. And sometimes Baba used to say, wait and see. And I think that's a good expression for what everybody's going through now, wait and see. And it may change into something that's really very favorable. But I think also the difficulties that people have to deal with are getting more. And for many of the old BKs who've been around 30, 40 years, aging is a big issue. There's not so many new Western BKs coming in, so it's an aging population. And so we have to deal with that. When you get older, you're slower, you can't rush around like you used to. Maybe your mind is not so fast, and your body is not so good. So that's just the way it is. Well, a Raj Yogi in relation to Father, Teacher, and Satguru means I am the daughter or son of Brahma, the grandchild of Shiva, and I am an heir to the inheritance. So I have to make sure that I get qualified as a child and that I behave as a child of God, which you interpret in your way. And then we're students, you see, so we're studying this incredible information, and we're continuing to do that. So we have to focus a lot of attention on that. And Satguru literally means that he takes us to salvation, or you could say liberation and liberation in life. And so we are preparing for our death every day. And, you know, some people, they avoid the whole subject of death, but traditionally in the Hindu culture, when you reach 60 or beyond, you take a guru and you leave all your family and property and everything. You go and live in an ashram, and you're in the Vanprastavasta stage of retirement. And Vani se pare means you go to the world of silence. You're going back to nirvana, and you're going to leave. And so you have to detach from your body. Like Baba uses this mantra, forget your body, forget your bodily relations, forget your bodily religion, dharma, culture, and remember one alone. So it's really the preparation for death. And we are immortal souls, but our bodies will die, and we will have to leave them, and they will just get left behind. And what the idea in BK is, we want to finish our karma, we want to become karmatit, and we want to leave the body and not come back, and come back when it's the next cycle. So, you know, if we can have destruction relatively soon, then that's good. But then if we're not karmatit by that time, then that's not good. So if we look at the dadis, they wanted to become karmatit, they let go of everything, and they went. And they are now in what we call the advanced party. And so, well, that's also something that we could try for, but we really must finish our karmic accounts. And this is something you do by yourself. This is an internal thing. So we are doing a lot of internal work, and we are in relation with each other as the BK community. And there is also the big machinery of the BK service and a public face and all of this. So there's some people more actively involved with that, and some people less actively involved with that, but we're involved to a greater or lesser extent, most definitely. Yes, also, you know, sometimes you have relationships with people that are really terrible, you know, and you experience a lot of suffering. And so this is why I think Baba gives us the 8 powers, because you're in the context of circumstances which can be very trying. And if you have the 8 powers of yoga to a good extent, you can manage that, you see. Because the problem is you suffer, somebody is horrible to you or hurts you or whatever, and then you react to that and you create new karma with the same person. And so then it's endless, you know. But if you can understand that you're settling karma and use the power of tolerance, accommodation, etc., then you're not going to be reactive and you're going to settle your karma and become free, because that's what we're trying to do, is become free. Then another thing Baba says about settling karma is that when you leave your body for the last time, there is Dharmaraj and the supreme justice. So if we haven't become karmatit by that time, and there's some outstanding karma to be settled, then he says that you will get some visions of what you did that was unsettled. And it could be in the context of the Yagya, or it could be not in the context of the Yagya, but it's outstanding. And then you get a vision of that, and then you get various different types of punishment. And then that could be quite bad, but then that's very painful in your subtle body. And then you can go back to the soul world. So that's how it's done. But you've got to be a pretty good yogi to do that. And this is why I'm focusing on this idea of us really becoming Shiv Shaktis and good yogis, and then we can settle our karma through yoga. But that's a pretty high level of Raj Yoga, you know. Well, the mace, I think, is connected with you being assertive. And because the mace is, you know, you use that symbol to say stop, you know. So with the Swadarshana chakra, it's symbol of a pure mind where you're not going to be mentally affected by anything, because you're using the yantra of the cycle. And the conch shell is pure speech, and you are not going to say something which is going to make your karma intensify. And the lotus flower is your action. So you're going to live in a detached way. You're going to manage by using all the powers and everything to actually live in the physical context of the Iron Age while being in the spiritual context of the Confluence Age. But the mace is where you say enough's enough, stop, you know, and you stand up for yourself, and you destroy the obstacles. That is also part of the Shiv Shakti's description of destroying the obstacles. And some of the pictures or the statues of the goddesses are really quite fearsome, like Kali, for example. She's got very fearsome equipment, a lot more than 4 arms. She's got 8 at least, and bowls of blood and swords and all that. So don't meet her on a dark night. But also, if you go to Calcutta, you have Kali, but you also have Durga Puja. And Durga is trampling on the devils, and that means you do not let people misuse you, abuse you, mess you around. And I think that, you know, using the mace to define your boundaries and stand up for yourself is a reasonable way to think about the mace.
Sister Denise, another question. What is the aesthetics of consciousness? I think there was a Murli notes where this came about, and there were a good number of comments about, wow, that's new.
Well, it's actually a very big and deep concept. So I think maybe it's something we need to look into more as time goes by, because the question has been arising among us, okay, what else should we do in the context of this EGY? And one idea has been that we really look in depth at the material that is covered in the introduction course, really go into deeply the soul, the supreme soul, karma, drama, all of this, because it's nice for us to refresh that for ourselves, but we are people who've been teaching it, we've been studying it, we've been living in the context of it for many, many years. And we know that these concepts are given to newcomers at quite a superficial level, but that they can be looked at in a very deep level, and that maybe it's nice to do that. And that would also cover the aesthetics of consciousness and many other rather interesting ideas like that. And just to give you a little idea of what I mean by the aesthetics of consciousness is that, you have to make decisions about things moment by moment. And you don't have time to go back to your notes and figure out what's the right thing to do that way. But if you're a photographer and you want to take a photograph, the light has to be right, the mood has to be right, everything has to be right. And then you click and you have a beautiful picture. And that is called aesthetics. When you have everything right. And I quite often go to museums, and I was recently in Paris, and I went to the Botticelli exhibition, and which was going on there. And you're seeing these incredible masterpieces that were done in the 12th, 13th century. And the beauty of the moment, and most of these are religious paintings, right? So there's a lot of a spiritual component in it, and to represent the beauty of spirituality through art is very difficult. And those who can capture that are known as the masters. And Baba calls us masters sometimes. So if we can use our consciousness in perfect way, moment by moment, because we get everything right, we have the balance of love and law, we have the balance of Gyan and yoga, we have the balance of yoga and service. All of these things are, we have a right sense of it, then people who see us would think that our consciousness is really beautiful, and God is called beauty. When there is one description of Shiva, he is called Satyam Shivam Sundaram. So he's truth, he's beauty, and he's Shiva. And going back to the reference of Rumi, he was also a mystic, and he could perceive God, and that is extraordinary. Not very many people can perceive God, and that we have this word manmanabhav, and I think about this in different ways, and one of them is that to be manmanabhav, you have to perceive the mind of God with your mind, and then you perceive the beauty. Shiv Baba lives in a state of bliss, even knowing what's going on in the world, but his state is like that. And he says, become Bap Saman. Bap Saman, what is that? You have to be like God. Who is like God? Nobody is like God, but try to be like God. Try to be that much beautiful in your mind. And then that's Raj Yoga. That's really beautiful. Om Shanti.